Alrighty guys, so once you have your background image looking like a coloring book, nice bright background, nice dark lines, the next thing that we need to talk about are layers. You can see down here in this lower right hand corner of my screen, I have my layers tab. If you're on paths or channels currently, go ahead, click over to layers, make sure you're on that tab. You'll see right now I have my background layer. That's this right here. Now if I was just going to go in and take my, for example, my brush tool and color on this layer, if I mess up, I have to hit Command Z, go back. I can only do Command Z so many times. So what we're going to do, rather than coloring on our original images, we're going to create some layers. Layers are just like transparent pieces of almost glass going over the original image. So on this layer, now I can paint, I can color, and if I mess up on this layer, all I have to do is take my eraser tool and erase on this layer. That will make it disappear. I could also delete the layer by hitting the trash can. I could turn off the layer by hitting this little eye right here. But the idea is each time I want, and right now I'm selecting the whole thing, I'm going to press delete. Each time I want an entirely new layer to draw or color on. The best thing to do when you're starting out coloring is to hit those big areas first. So maybe I'm like, okay, I think it would be really neat if the room in my apartment right here was blue. I'm going to come over here to the third tool down, the lasso tool. If you hover over it or you press down on it, you'll be able to bring up the menu and choose the polygon lasso tool. With that, I'm going to start clicking from one corner, and I'm just going to go through and select the entire ceiling of my room. Try to do that as nice and neatly as I can. Okay, so right now the ceiling of my room is selected. Over here on this side, there's this tool. It may show up as the gradient tool at first for you, but go ahead, click down on it, hit paint bucket. With the paint bucket, now I can choose a color, either right down here or over here. Find a nice shade of blue that I want. I'm going to make it a little bit deeper, more saturated than I actually want it. You'll find out why in just a minute. Okay, so that's a beautiful like midnight blue ceiling right here. But what do you notice? It blocks out some of the things that I've drawn, right? So what I'm going to do, once that ceiling's in place, first of all, I'm going to deselect. I'm going to hold Command D for deselect. And then over here in fill, I'm going to bring this down from 100%. I have to make sure I'm on layer 1. Bring that down from 100% to probably about maybe 70%. That looks pretty good. What that does now, even though these things are still covered up, like the lights right here, I can see them. I can now go in with my eraser tool, especially if I zoom in a little bit, and any areas that I don't want light or that blue shade, I can just go in with my eraser tool and start erasing. Change the tool to a different size if I'm finding it's too big for the edges. Now if like maybe when I'm erasing I'm like, ooh, I went outside the lines there, it's not looking quite as neat as I want, I could paint that back, but what's going to happen when I pick up this paint color with my little eyedropper tool, if I can find it over here, if I pick that up and I go back in and I paint, I might end up painting the color that it originally was on top of it. So rather than do that, a good tool to use is the smudge tool. I'm just going to take that little smudge tool and nudge the color back into the place it needs to be. That can look a little more natural sometimes too when you use that smudge tool rather than the eraser or the pencil. So that's just how I kind of like to start in with my different areas of my picture, getting in the larger parts colored and keeping then some of the smaller parts like masked off or erased. Now for example, like this ceiling right here, right now it looks great, it's a beautiful blue, but if I want, for example, to like say, oh, my light source is coming from the window over here, this would be brighter, this would probably be a medium tone, this would be darker. Then I can go in and select that section of the ceiling, for example, this one that I know would be in shadow, I'm still making sure I'm on the same layer, layer 1. If I go up here to, for example, image, adjustments, I could go to brightness contrast, I could go to curves. Make that just a little bit darker. Do you see how now it looks like there's a little shadow on that side? I'm going to do the same thing over here, but with a highlight. Back to image, adjustments, curves. Make this side a little brighter blue, like the sun is hitting it. Hit OK. Deselect. And my ceiling now is pretty much painted in. Again, go in, erase anything that I don't want to be blue, but that's the idea for the larger sections of your picture, like walls, floors, maybe rugs, couches, big things. You can paint in by selecting. People like to use lots of different painting techniques. If you find one that works better for you, go for it. But this is just a really nice way to lay in some of your larger overall colors. Whenever you change colors, for example, if I was going to go ahead and do the rug next, I would start a new layer, do the colors on the new layer. When you create all these layers, you just kind of have to keep track of them. So something that's not a bad idea to do is, for example, on this layer for the blue, even though I can kind of see the blue, I'm going to name it ceiling. And that will help me keep track of what I'm doing. At this point, you guys can continue on painting the large sections of your room. We'll talk more about details later, but this is essentially the next step of this project.